Hey there everyone, today I have another live review for you guys. This time it will be Converge at the Camden KOKO. This gig actually happened on the 25th of November, or in my case, last night. Upon arriving at the venue, I went straight in and straight to the merch stand and saw a copy of Parting the Sea Between Brightness and Me by Touche Amore on vinyl. And it was actually a limited edition tour release. It was only 500 printed, so I thought I'd pick one up and start the night off on a higher rate. So anyway, bought that for 20 quid. Chucked it in my bag, took my bag to the cloakroom, put that in there, and straight after that I went into the venue and stood in front of a stage waiting for The Secret to come on. It was still fairly empty at this point, the crowds hadn't really flooded in just yet, it was still really filling out like I said. However, I reviewed their latest album and I gave it a pretty positive review, so I was looking forward to seeing these guys. And now, the second they came on, the first thing I noticed was they were incredibly tight and polished throughout the entire set. They were very rehearsed, you could very much tell that. There was a lot of fog in the room at the time, and also instead of having breaks in between songs, they generally filled it out with a drone or feedback or some sort of noise in an attempt to try and keep the intensity levels pretty high, which they did really bloody well, especially considering their songs are like, what? The vast majority of them are about 2 minutes and feature tons of blast beats, really hard hitting chords and stuff like that. And another thing that really added to the effect is the frontman. He did not say anything outside of the lyrics, and he just used a lot of hand gestures to try and convey what he wanted to convey. Now, to be honest, I can't really fault their set. I must admit, a bit of energy, or a bit more energy at least, would have been a bit nicer. Each member sort of stood in their position, just headbanging or doing something like that. So a bit more energy would have been quite nice. However, like I said, it was a really enjoyable set, really great opening to the night, so yeah, can't really fault it. On a quick side note, on record, they certainly have a lot of black metal influence. Live, it's a lot more obvious. There seems to be a lot more emphasis on sort of the black metal chord progressions and stuff like that. Probably because the guitars were turned up louder and just you could hear them more clearly. The next band on the bill was the only one I actually didn't know. They were called A Storm of Light, and they pretty much walked on with a projector that was displaying tons of images of sort of riots and people versus police situations. Once they came on and started playing, it was even more tight and even more polished than the previous band. They actually pretty much tuned up and knew exactly when to kick in based on the footage they were showing. There was no speaking or anything like that in between songs. I will say, again, it was an incredibly intense set, way more so than The Secrets. Their particular sludgy and dark brand of post-metal really sort of emphasised that, and it just created a very heavy and dense atmosphere that was really, really effective, especially considering how loud these guys were playing. The projector that was displaying footage and images went from basically lots of riots and man-made destruction, such as demolitions and stuff like that, war for example, and it eventually sort of went on to natural disasters, volcanoes, earthquakes and floods. And during their last song, the footage was sort of grainier and brown, had a more lo-fi kind of quality to it, and I may be reading into this a bit too much, but it was kind of had a theme of rebirth because it had the initial footage showing, which was essentially a guy holding a sign that said Brave New World upon it. But anyway, that was the general sort of theme I got from their set regardless. Another thing to note, it's kind of a smaller thing, but there you go. Each guitarist had like a blue light that sort of illuminated the neck of the guitar. It was just a really, really nice addition, especially considering they didn't really have a great deal of lighting. It was very much just dark for the whole set. And I will say, because of that, the drummer was slightly buried in the background and you couldn't really see him all that well. And I might be taking that a bit too personally as I actually play drums, but whatever. I still thought their set was really great and nice and crushing too, a nice mix. A nice addition to the bill and it sort of mixed things up. Next up was the band I actually knew the best, Touche Amore. I've seen these guys twice before, both times were earlier this year, and I pretty much knew what to expect really. And they delivered exactly that. It was probably the loosest and least rehearsed set of the bill. That's not to say it was sloppy, just not quite as tight as the rest of the bands on this bill. It was very, very high quality indeed. However, it was still a very enjoyable set. Frontman Jeremy being the most passionate man in the building, he actually ran up to the barriers several times during the set and got into the crowd during the last song. And throughout the set they pretty much just blasted through these tracks. I mean, their songs only last like, what, a minute and a half on average? So they didn't really spend any time talking or doing anything else other than either tuning or playing. The actual members put in quite a bit of energy as well, not a huge amount. I would like to see them sort of do a bit more, but there you go. I will say for a support act, the crowd was incredible. They were really, really loud in terms of singing along. I know Touche Amore are a band that you pretty much have to know the words to really get them in a live environment, but the whole crowd was really loud, and the amount of crowd surfers probably beat the amount that Converge had, who were headlining, which kind of blew my mind. But regardless, on to the night's headliners, Converge, one of the longest running and most influential bands still going, especially within the hardcore punk scene. Firstly, I covered their latest album, and when I found out that they were playing 8 songs from it, I was pretty damn excited because I loved that record. I really gave it a really positive review. And also, this being my first time seeing Converge live, I was actually incredibly excited to see them. And even then, they completely blew me away. They opened the set with Jane Doe opener, Concubine, and despite the song being only 1 minute and 19 seconds, the crowd just went for it. Jacob got straight into the crowd and was greeted by a very loud and wild crowd. He was allowing people to sing into the mic, prioritising the crowd surfers over everyone else, which I kind of liked for some reason, but that's just a minor thing. But anyway, as the set went on, Converge really showed that they've been playing for such a long time, because it was not only the most musically tight set on this bill, but pretty much the tightest set I've seen from a band ever, with the possible exception of the Dillinger Escape Plan. There was not a single note misplaced. It was just so tight and polished, but that's not to say it felt overly rehearsed or contrived or anything like that. It was still very loose and very punk. And even though the band's energy was beyond 99% of bands within this genre, I could not keep my eyes off their frontman Jacob, often disappearing and then reappearing on a stack of speakers at the side of the stage, or in certain cases just right in front of my face at the barriers. The dude kept up his energy for the entire set as well. He was sweating so much by the end of it, but I've never seen a frontman not run out of energy like that. It really was incredible to watch. But regardless, the thing I enjoyed most about him was actually all of his facial expressions and hand gestures. They were absolutely brilliant, just very often sort of grabbing the air, and in a sense, kind of acting. Between songs, Jacob was just sort of throwing a lot of jokes out there, and it was probably the least intense set of the entire day, but he actually turned out to be a really likeable, funny guy, which I didn't expect at all. Not to say I expected him to be really horrible or anything like that, I just didn't expect him to be throwing out as many jokes as he did. Another thing is he was pretty much a master of the mic for the night. He was spinning it around everywhere, throwing it everywhere, catching it perfectly in time to sing as well. In terms of material, they pretty much covered mostly new material. Like I said, they played 8, or last night they actually played 9 songs from All We Love, the latest one. They played a ton of songs from Axe to Fall as well. And they threw in a couple from Jane Doe and also from You Fail Me, which was nice to hear too. But ultimately, it was just an amazing performance from an amazing band. On the whole, I actually felt like this was probably the best gig of the year. Every single band was absolutely great to watch and brought something new to the gig as well. And amongst these performances, one performance was probably the best performance from a band I've seen this year. So anyway, I felt like The Secret deserved a 6.5 out of 10 for their performance. It was really, really great, intense, enjoyable, hardcore, infused with black metal set. A Storm of Light and Touche Amore, despite the fact they're both completely different bands, I felt like they both deserved about a 7.5 for their sets. Both of them really brilliant, bringing something totally new to the table, either just extreme amounts of passion and energy, or just a crushing atmosphere. However, the undisputed kings of tonight and kings of metalcore, hardcore, whatever you want to call it in general, Converge, I would give them a 9.5 out of 10 for this performance. It really did blow me away. I did not expect it at all. I don't want to undersell this in any way. If you haven't seen them, go see them. It will be one of the best shows you'll attend, providing you're already a fan of the band anyway. And that pretty much sums up everything I have to say. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of this gig if you was there. If not, just let me know what you think of any of these bands, if you've seen them on the live front or on record, whatever. Just throw some opinions out there. And I'll catch you guys and gals later.